Hey everybody, this is Brett Grayson of Tactical Pay Radio, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the high-functioning marksman, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. All too often, gun owners and gun culture are portrayed in the worst possible ways in the media. Old, racist white guys who love their guns more than kids. This podcast aims to counter that narrative by shining a light on the members of gun culture who are involved in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, while IDPA members make up just a tiny fraction of the overall gun-owning public, I think they're a representative cross-section of that demographic. They're all races, young and old, men and women, and who are great people to be around. And this podcast is about them. Today, you're going to meet one of these awesome people. Before we get started, let me tell you about GlockTriggers.com. Love them or hate them, the one thing you know about Glock pistols is that they are reliable. Out of the box, to the range, absolutely reliable. It's what makes them so popular with competitors, law enforcement, military, and responsible armed citizens. But one of the drawbacks is that stock trigger. Well, Jeff Wilson and the folks at Glock Triggers asked themselves, how do we make them better while maintaining reliability? Using stock parts as their foundation, they've refined the interaction of the metal parts to give you smoother take-up, a cleaner break, and reduced over-travel without sacrificing safety or reliability. Recommended and used by people like Bob Vogel, Travis Haley, and Ken Hackathorn, Glock Triggers custom trigger kits come with a lifetime warranty and a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. Visit them today at GlockTriggers.com and check out the Edge, the Vogel, the Skimmer, the Guardian, and the Hackathorn trigger systems. Use the promo code from this podcast, USC20, and save 20% off of your entire order. GlockTriggers.com. The highest quality drop-in trigger system for your Glock. Our guest today is Scott Hurt from Evansville, Indiana. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, tell us a little about yourself. Tell us what you do for a living there in Evansville.
Well, I recently retired. I retired in May after 33 years on the police department. I was a sergeant and went through quite a few of the different areas of our police department, including our firearms program and SWAT. And I've just always had an interest in guns and shooting and competitive shooting. I started in 1988 shooting a revolver in PPC. It's just basically bullseye shooting, and That's kind of how I got started shooting pistols.
So, before you became a police officer, what was the? Did you grow up around guns? Were you? Did you have guns in the home, or was it something that you developed an interest that you developed as you were growing up?
I just developed an interest. We didn't have guns growing up. I was kind of a city boy, not much of a hunter, and not much of a shooter. But once I got into law enforcement, and that was my first real taste of firearms, I liked it. It was like, man, this is a lot of fun. There is a sport to shooting guns, and man, I'll tell you, I've got some friends. They play tennis, they play golf, and we talk about it because I like to shoot guns. I shoot pistols. I tell them, hey, it is no different than you going out and shooting golf, playing golf. You drive the ball, you chip and you putt, and you're out there having a great time. And, well, as shooters, we're kind of the same way. We work on our accuracy. We work on our speed. And, we try to hone the finer parts of the game, like if you were playing golf and or tennis and things like that. So, yeah, I got into revolver shooting way back when in 1988.
What was the first firearm that you bought for yourself?
It was a Model 66 Smith & Wesson revolver.
Ah.
Yeah.
And
That was.
and what was the attraction to the revolver, and then to law enforcement? How did you get interested in law enforcement?
You know what? That's a whole nother 30-minute segment. But I, it's something I've known I've always wanted to do. I take up for people who can't take up for themselves, and that's what a lot of the police officers do. They, they protect those that can't, and I like that aspect of it. And I like the enforcement side. I like the community service part of law enforcement. There's just everything attracted me to law enforcement. I was always a rule follower as a kid. So that was, if you're a rule follower, you probably have a good interest in law enforcement. I did. And, and I gravitated to people, like-minded people that kind of went by the rules and obeyed the law. I didn't get in a lot of trouble when I was a kid and growing up. And I was fortunate that I always knew what I wanted to do. And I feel for a lot of young people that they haven't quite found their way. They don't know what they want to do. And that wasn't me. Yeah.
Yeah. So you went from PCC to IDPA. How did you first hear about IDPA? How did you get involved in it?
Well, I had a buddy that was a competitive shooter. He was shooting USPSA. And, I have to say, back in the day, everything USPSA related was expensive. And I'd shot some USPSA with him. But everyone appeared to have race guns and with all the race gear. And when IDPA came out, I think the attraction of using box guns and shooting the match tactically, there were things that were appealing. And it appealed to me as a police officer, but it just also appealed to me as a competitive shooter. So that I could take a whatever gun I wanted to shoot, and I've always gravitated to Glock. And I could take a Glock and put on a fiber optic sight, and I could be competitive right out of the box.
Right. So how long after you started shooting PCC before you took up IDPA?
Well, it'd been.
So you said 88, right?
Yeah, and I didn't start shooting IDPA until about 2000, maybe 2001, right in there.
Okay.
We started a local club here in the Evansville area, and it just started to grow. There were other, again, like-minded people that didn't want to go out and spend a whole lot of money on equipment, and they liked the idea that it was somewhat tactical. And we had great turnouts. We started putting on monthly matches, and I was hooked. I was hooked.
So you had the law enforcement experience. You had the experience of shooting PCC for a number of years. Did you have the same kind of butterflies that what was that first IDPA match like for you?
Oh, absolutely. And it's just like everyone else. Again, I'd spent time on the SWAT team, and just because you're in law enforcement, you spend time on the SWAT team doesn't mean when you walk up to the line. Even at big matches to this day, I get a few butterflies, and I think it's normal. If you don't, then you maybe don't love the sport enough. I don't know, but I still get nervous before big matches, and I think that's all part of the attraction too. I love that adrenaline. So,
what was your first sanctioned match that you participated in?
Well, the first sanctioned match was here locally, and I'd shot a number of our local matches, and I decided that I wanted to again shoot competitively, but I wanted to be good. I just didn't want to be a once a month at a monthly match kind of guy. And at the time, I had some other hobbies. I was playing basketball. I was playing softball. There were all these other things that I was doing. And I had a friend. He said, you're not really good at much. But if you, a friend. Yeah, you're not really good at much. But if you quit all these other activities and you would concentrate on shooting, shoot 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week, pick the gun up every night, get some instruction, then there's a possibility that you could actually maybe be pretty good. And we laughed a little bit, and I went home and talked it over with my wife, and I said, I think this is what I want to do. And she said, wow, you're not going to play softball 3 nights a week, and you're not going to play basketball a couple of nights. No, I think I'm going to quit all that, and I'm going to start shooting. And I'll tell you, where it's at, especially for new shooters, or if you want to take your shooting to the next level, you have to surround yourself with better shooters. And I did that. You have to take some instruction from people who are better than you. And I did that. That first year, I took a class with Dave Savigny, and that was just amazing to spend the day with him. And it seemed like that next year my shooting went crazy. I ended up winning the Indiana State IDPA. I won the Tennessee State IDPA the year after I had instruction from Dave. And then the next year I went on to win Illinois, Missouri. I think I won the Indiana Regional. I won the Missouri-Tennessee Indoor. And it was because I took the instruction, and Dave Savigny, he taught me how to practice. A lot of guys go out there and they practice the things that they're good at. And he told me, he said, you can't do that. And you need to go out there and practice the things that you really suck at and work on them. and back then, Dave didn't even own a television. I said, oh my goodness, you don't own a TV? I love the TV. How do you not watch ball games and movies and things like that? He goes, I'd pick up my gun. And I dry fire, and I walk around the house. And he said, you want to learn how to shoot on the move? You've got to do those kind of things. And so we spent a day together, and he taught me how to practice. And I spent the next year doing the things I didn't like to do, and it paid off. I had a lot of support from the police department, especially when I was winning, and my wife. You talk about having a number one fan. She was very supportive. I can remember times where we had a daughter, and we'd wake her up at 3 a.m. and put her in the car, and we'd drive 3 or 4 hours to a tournament. And, they would go shopping while I shot all day. So it was a family affair. They were on board, and man, those were really some great times back then. I was having a blast.
That's great that you can do that. I tried that, and that turned out to be an absolute disaster. My family, I took them with me to Oklahoma to the Badlands championship in 2014, I think it was.
Oh, what a great match! Yeah.
And not that year. That year it rained nonstop, and it was just. I told my wife, I was like, you guys can hang out at the hotel and swim in the pool and go shopping. And then we'll, when I'm done, then we'll get together. We'll go out to eat. Nah, didn't work out. It rained cats and dogs all day.
Oh, wow.
My 5-year-old was just not having it. She was not happy about that. So, that we've never repeated that that family trip.
Yeah, it has been it's been a great ride over these years, shooting IDPA and again, especially having the support of my wife and my family, and it's not just her, but it's my whole family, and the police department. The police department, I don't have enough great things to say about them and the way that they've treated me. We have an indoor range, and they would allow me to go onto the indoor range and shoot. So where a lot of people are fair weathered shooters, they don't shoot a whole lot in the wintertime. That's usually where I made my gains.
Right.
I was able to shoot indoors and work on a few things, and it really helped. And again, taking instruction. I had instruction from Rob Vogel, and, that guy is an outstanding shooter, and I spent a day with him. And I think that helped. You surround yourself with people that are good shooters, people that you can learn from, that can help you, and then when you are on your own, you can work on the things that you've learned. But man, I tell you what, I'm here in Evansville. We border Kentucky and also Illinois, and fortunately, we have some phenomenal shooters. In fact, Brad Edens this past weekend won the division championship at the IDPA Nationals, and Brad gives me credit for helping him through the sport, but little does Brad know, he helps me and he helps everyone because he's such a great shooter. And you have Kevin Farrar and Jay Heil, Mark Hammond, all those guys went to the Nationals and shot. We're fortunate that we have a lot of really good shooters, and they call me, if I can get this right, one of the founding fathers. Like, oh, you're one of the founding fathers of IDPA, help starting it in our area. Yes, you're right. And I did have a lot of success, not so much recently. And I think a lot of that is because the shooters are so much better than they were when I first started out. I was fortunate enough to win several state championships. Now I look at the guys that are winning, and they are so much better now than I was back then. There are more shooters. I think they're more serious about it. I look at Brad, and Brad Edens, he's just phenomenal. He's a phenomenal shooter. But he's better now than I ever was back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8 when I was winning state championships.
How often do you talked about practice and working on the things that you're not good at? How often do you practice now that you're retired and you have more time? How does it compare? How does it compare to back when you were winning state championships?
Well, I wish I could tell you that I've spent a lot of time at the range over the last couple of months, but I haven't. There's so many other things since I have retired. My wife has retired. That there are so many things that we do that shooting has kind of taken a back seat in the last couple of months. But it's something that I intend to rededicate myself to here real soon. There are a couple of real good matches coming up. The Indiana State IDPA Championship is coming up in a few weeks, and the Holiday Havoc, which is a local match here in Evansville, local IDPA match. They'll have 150, 60 shooters. It is, I believe, the third week of October. It was the best match I shot last year, and I shot quite a few of the majors. And that Holiday Havoc, Kevin Farrar puts on an outstanding match. Everyone left, just nodding their head. We were all in agreement. This was the match of the year right here. So,
what is it about that match every year that, or do you have a memory from a particular past match that you could share that give people a flavor of what's so great about it?
Well, and I can't just single out one match because that wouldn't be fair. Let me tell you, I've shot some outstanding matches with some phenomenal people, and that's why I've stayed in the sport so long. I have made friends and people I call brother. That's how we look at this. We are brothers, and fortunately, when Brad won the other night, and Kevin Farrar was there, they text me. They were giving me updates on how things were going, and it's just that closeness, the friendship that you develop. And so, yeah, I don't have one special match that I can point my finger at that I won't ever forget. If I had to maybe point to one, I won the Illinois State Pistol Championship 3 years in a row. The first year I won it, and probably the second year I won it too, I was not the best shooter. I was maybe the best shooter that day, but I was not the best shooter. And the first time I won, Tony Hawkins I want to say there were 13 or 14 stages, and Tony beat me about 10 out of the 13. But he had one real bad stage, and I had stayed close with him most of the day, but I felt like I was shooting for second place, you know. And he had a real bad stage, and I ended up winning. And I tell people that, the first year I won that, I wasn't the best. I wasn't the best shooter, you know, by a long shot.
What's your favorite division? You said you're a Glock guy. I assume that the Glock or a Glock of some sort is your choice of firearm.
It is. I like. I'm a master in SSP, and I shoot the Glock 34. I have been shooting CCP, and I like the 19, the new 19. I like some of the features that it has, but you know, Smith and Wesson makes a revolver. I like that SSP Pro that they have, and I shot all year. Last year, I shot all year in the revolver division.
Really?
I told him, I said, I'm coming full circle. You know, I started out as a revolver guy, and I'm probably going to end up a revolver guy. So I like shooting revolver, and I like that Smith & Wesson SSP Pro that they've got.
What was that transition like? I've talked to some people who say, man, I really like to shoot my revolver, but I really don't like shooting it in competition.
Well, yeah, I can't compete with a revolver with the semi-autos. And you have to lose that mentality. If you beat the semi-autos, then that makes it all that much better. But I think the revolver shooting has made me a better semi-automatic shooter. I think that's what helped me in the early years of shooting when I was shooting PPC, because when you're shooting revolver, front sight focus and trigger control are very, very important when you shoot a revolver. Those are, every time you're pulling that trigger, you're thinking front sight focus, trigger control, front sight focus, trigger control. And it carried over to semi-automatic, that I didn't want to pull the trigger until my sights were lined up on target and I was going to make an accurate shot. And that's what PPC revolver shooting is all about. It's not as much about speed. It's all about accuracy. So I would go into matches when I started into IDPA, and I was really accurate. Now, I was really slow. I wasn't fast at all. In fact, over this last year, all of my buddies, when I retired, I shot over at the Backstoppers Challenge in Missouri, and Mark Godey, what a great guy. He gave me a very nice plaque for my years of service in IDPA and for my 33 years of service on the police department. And the local guys bought me a shirt, had one made, had this really cool shooting shirt made, and on the back it says, I just want to shoot fast. And because I'm always saying that, you know, I'm going, gosh, I wish I could shoot fast. I wish I could shoot fast. I might be accurate, but it'd be nice if I could shoot a little faster. So they put that on a shirt and they gave it to me. What a great day that was. So
nice. So I suspect I know, based on your previous answers, sort of what you're going to say here, but I always finish up with this question. What is it, after all of these years, what is it about IDPA that you love? What is it that you're passionate about? What is it that's special about IDPA that keeps you doing it?
Well, again, you already know the answer to that, and it's going to be the friends and the relationships over the years, and that's what keeps you going. That's why you go back every month, to see these people, the people that you call friends and brothers. And you know, there's been months I haven't wanted to get up and drive up to that range. It may have been cold and nasty, but you want to see the guys that you've known for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, people who started out with you. You've developed this friendship, this relationship, and where I've got 4 or 5 guys we text, not every night, but close. And it does, sometimes it's not even about shooting, but it's that friendship and the relationship that that you build with these people. And you, especially when you start going to big matches, you see and it's not always the same old people, but there are a lot of the same people that are shooting in my area. They're shooting Indiana, Illinois, Tennessee, Missouri. They're even maybe Arkansas. They're shooting all these big matches, and they're just wonderful people. And it's a sport. I always say it's a game. These targets aren't shooting back. The targets aren't shooting back. This is a game. So you kind of get out of it what you're putting into it. And I don't know. I love it, and I will probably shoot until I can't shoot anymore.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I really do appreciate it, and thank you for all you've done for the sport there in Indiana.
Well, yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right, that's all we've got for you today. Thank you so much to our special guest for coming on the show. If you know somebody in the IDPA community who deserves some recognition, I'd love to talk to them. Send me an email at Lloyd, LLOYD, at unloadpodcast.com. Check out the show notes for today's episode and listen to past episodes at unloadpodcast.com. And if you like what you hear on the show and you'd like to support us, help keep the lights on, pay the bills, we would love your support. Visit patreon.com/unload and make a small monthly contribution to help continue what we're doing here. Tune in again next week for another edition of Unload and Show Clear.